the importance of safety cannot be emphasized enough, because again, everyone has made the statement, and I'll reinforce that, is that one accident can cause us our job, but more importantly, someone's life. I always draw this parallel, and Divyesh rightly drew the parallel with the aviation industry, is that one mistake there means probably 200 people down the sea. Same goes with us, is one mistake by us doesn't mean that you will earn 200 rupees less or 400 rupees more, but it's playing with someone's life. So always weigh your chances against the life of someone when you take people out for adventure. That is what safety is all about. But planning, equipment, we've spoken about jargon, we've spoken about planning. How many of us do actually understand all these things? How many of us can comprehend all of these things? Do we have the skills? Do we have the knowledge? Do we have the training? Do we know how to handle various situations? Do we know what safety, what rescue, what evacuation, what all of this means? It boils down to us. It boils down to the people related to the adventure industry. And this means that we have to undergo through a lot of training. Spending a lot of time on training is not a waste of time. Actually, it's a very, very good investment is what I believe. And this is something that most of the top-notch industries actually adopt. How much amount of time do you spend training yourself? How much amount of time do you spend in the real environment? How much amount of time do you spend familiarizing yourself with systems? For that topic, we have Colonel Gulshan Chadha. Well, of course, our association, the association of an adventure industry cannot be far away from our very own services and defense people. After all, most of us have been trained under in Nehru Institute of Mountaineering or Himalayan Mountaineering Institutes, or one of these institutes which come under the Ministry of Defense. We've worked under their regimented rules for those 28 days and ground very well to understand what adventure and safety is all about. Mr. Colonel Gulshan Chadha has a vast amount of experience, 20 years of experience working in the Indian Army. He is currently the principal of the Himalayan Mountaineering Institute, an autonomous body specialized in offering training for mountaineering. He is a very avid mountaineer and a trekker for over 20 years. He has a holistic approach. He is not just about adventure, but he likes to address the humane angle, the training angle as well along, rather than just taking people or advising them to just take to the outdoors. But it comes with an overall approach of how to approach a mountain or approach a trek or approach an outdoor activity. At present, he's busy with raising a new mountaineering institute. That's good news for us. Raising a new mountaineering institute and adventure sports institute in Arunachal Pradesh, called the National Institute of Mountaineering and Allied Sports, which means that we have more seats open. Do I take that? This is going to be in Dirang, which offers not only training in mountaineering, but other adventure sports as well, like skiing, paragliding, paramotor flying. Wow, I mean, imagine being trained in all of these activities as well, and that's a real welcome news for all of us. He has led numerous expeditions for the Indian Army, as well as operated community development initiatives in countries as far as the Democratic Republic of Congo, in training and empowering local communities for income generation projects. He has been an infantryman, and his work includes infantry peacekeeping, counter-terrorism operations. I'm sure that has a lot of experience that he can share. Counter-insurgency operations, training and human capacity building of soldiers. Of course, what we end up doing on an everyday basis, he does it at a larger scale, winning hearts and minds of civil populace in insurgency-prone areas as well, guarding borders in the high altitude. That's real salute to him. It is our utmost honor to hear Colonel Gulshan Chadha on the topic of training as far as safety is concerned. May I welcome him on the dais to share his thoughts about training.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a matter of privilege to be speaking to you and holding you back from your evening tea. But I can't help it. An athlete who runs about for 9.9 seconds in an Olympic over 100 meters would roughly train him or herself in those 4 years, that interregnum between one to other Olympics, for about 1,000 days. And when in mountaineering or trekking in high altitudes, Satpuras or Sahyadris or anywhere, where each one of us, whether we are leading the group or are the member of the group, but are supposed to be performing at the almost optimum level of our physical fitness and mental robustness, how much we train for that event is for the house to judge themselves. Training of staff, training of clients, the first person we need to train, ladies and gentlemen, is our own self. Training is a very, very continuous process. It is not at my age, I'm fairly rigid, and sometimes I find that I don't require any training. But then, when the young people come from various parts of India and we have to get out with them from Yoksam to Bakkim, those 14 kilometers over 5 hours, if you need to keep pace with them, you need to train. We need to train for the risk which we are going to encounter. Inherent and varied risk. What are these inherent risks in adventure? I'm not going to throw the question open to house because it's going to take a little longer. So we're just going to be precise with the time. Terrain, weather, physical fitness of various participants, their different levels of their physical fitness, their mental makeup, their ability to absorb the conditions or adapt to those conditions are some of the very, very, you can say, inherent risks in the field of adventure. The variation of the risks are also based on these inherited risks. But the outward appearance of physical fitness or bearing the weight and volume of the individual is, including age, is no barometer to that person's fitness. I myself had to return from South Col on my first Everest expedition, whereas a Colombian nurse who was one pace ahead of me reached the summit that night. She was 55 years old, I was 33 years old. So sometimes the exceptions are there, sometimes these exceptions are exceptionally determined to do a task and they will do it. So it is, the variables are highly variable. So there are nothing, there is a lady from Mumbai who is well past 50 and will be going to the Everest this summer. And to my mind, she is at least 25% more fitter than me. And she will do it. So these risks are there. Then there are certain risks of perception. As Mr. Muni had brought out, are the parents aware? Today morning while sitting here at HMI Darjeeling, 100 girls have reported for NCC Everest Expedition 2016. It is a 28 days camp where to fill up 10 slots, these 100 girls have to fight for their place. But a lady from Bangalore has rung me up that her daughter has not got the reservation in second AC. She had to travel by that sleeper class. So for first 24 hours, we should show some consideration toward her. No, it has, the parents really do not know what they are sending their children for. Ashutosh Gawarikar has done a lot, to promote this field by that television serial. But still that awareness level in parents is absolutely missing. Hardcore adventure activity versus outbound education, the line is very, very thin. where one starts, where one ends, the other begins. So it is, we need to actually, and large number of us, we work on both the sides of the fence. That also is one of the reasons. So there is absolutely no awareness, and even the children who are coming into it, they also sometimes do not understand, and they have a certain kind of a perception which is based on certain magazines or reports or Bear Grylls serial in National Geographic. So these are the things. As no data is available on either incidents, accidents, or emergencies which have occurred in Indian adventure scene. Very few, incidents gets reported, because any incident which gets reported, brings the knee-jerk reaction from the government. Disclaimer here: I'm part of the government. I'm, not being critical of the government. Like, we are part of the government, but then the government comes down very heavily on an activity. Somebody falling or dying on a bungee rope, the bungee gets banned. Somebody going overboard in Ganges, the rafting will earn bad name. Somebody not being evacuated from high altitude, dying of hypothermia, the treks will be under the scanners. These kind of things. But there is no quantification of these, incidents. There is no debriefing being done. We really do not know what triggered the incident. Whereas if we compare ourselves to places like New Zealand, Queenstown is the place, everybody says it's the adventure capital of the world. All possible adventure activities can take place there. And over a period of last 30 years, they have such wonderful record keeping that even the debrief tapes, cassette tapes of the clients who had got injured or who had seen an incident are available for us to analyze. This is little, you can say here, overlap. Risk minimization plan, as was taken by Mr. Devesh Muni. Firstly, we must disclose the risk. One person whose name would come to my mind, who are, I think, the industry leaders in disclosing the risk and rejecting the client based on their client's medical and physical state, is Asian Trekking in Nepal. Stephen Dawa Sherpa, who's the now MD, who's taken over from his father, Apa Sherpa. So they would be very candid. They will put you through the entire risk statement, risk analysis, that this is which can happen to you. And to our perception, you are not fit. Reduction in business by one client is acceptable. So we need to, get that kind of you can say, conviction in ourselves also. Use of public spaces. I am from Himachal Pradesh. A lot of adventure activities get into trouble, and a flyer has taken off with a passenger in tandem on his paraglider from Gulaba or from Madi or from Rohtang, and is now landing in somebody's apple orchard. That person will chase you away, because if you even brush past a tree, 20 kgs of apple crop will be damaged. If you are landing in a kiwi yard, more than 10 to 15 kgs of kiwi will get, wasted. So whether they are public or private spaces, we need to keep everybody on board. There are places in the world where the regulation on public spaces are very good. In Sweden, if you are on a cycling holiday, I might as well come and camp in your kitchen garden. You cannot stop me. The government will pay for the damage. The cyclists have right to camp wherever they wish to, including the town squares. The traffic will be diverted, but the cyclist can camp. So, we need to. We need to make a framework where adventure firstly is given a little more respect than what it is. And secondly, we must also produce a bit of spark and substance by saying no to the people who cannot. Variable jurisdictions. I am been tasked to raise a mountaineering and allied sports institute in Arunachal. I am trying to create a plug and play facility for the tourism industry, for the camping industry, to come there and just, they have to do nothing. They just have to come with their clients, the tents, the equipment, everything will be there. It will be, 7-8 days trek circuit where they have to just carry themselves or maybe a little water on that well-marked trail. As far as the kitchens are concerned, they are supposed to be under FSSAI, some new authority. The camp, tentage and all that, they have to be inspected by the forest as well as fire department. The water and electricity, the village council has to give the permission and public health has to provide water. And there is myriad number of conditions which I have to fulfill. And being a government organization, we cannot ignore even a single one of them. Not that somebody is going to come and ask us, but tomorrow something happens, all those 43 conditions have to be met. So the variable jurisdiction in the adventure sector needs to be, you can say, brought under one umbrella organization, or however the people from the industry need to decide and work with the government. Best practices and approved codes, this is nothing very difficult. We have 4 institutes working in adventure field and a large number of people through ATOI as well as ATOM. If we can create a framework in which we have, you can say, some universally accepted practices in all adventure sports, it can be very helpful. More so to us, because then we would know what to train that manpower on. Soft skill is something which we have added in our courses in HMI as well as in National Institute of Mountaineering and Allied Sports in Arunachal. But apart from that, there are so many other things which industry can recommend, and we are all ears and very open to this. Incident sharing and analysis. We need to have a center which can be a kind of an archive or a repository where these incidents can be shared. Or how does the training help us? Training definitely creates a better working environment. Now, how does training create a better working environment? If a worker is fully trained, confident of his moves, confident of his hand-eye coordination while giving a demonstration or while conducting a client, it will improve the overall experience. It will look very professional. Otherwise, I go back to that first presentation where instructor going beyond his capability is falling in front of his students. It's, to say the least, shameful. Absolutely not acceptable. But if these kind of things are happening, we need to take stock of the things. A worker cannot participate in decision making till the time he is trained. If that goddamn person doesn't know how to even fill his raft with the correct air pressure, what decision is he going to make? To empower that person so that he's capable of taking a decision at the point when there is an incident or an accident or an emergency. The most important part is his training. Till the time he's trained, he cannot. Of course, a man who's well trained, can always, boost the morale of the group. His own morale will remain high and can carry the day much, much easily than the one who's not. This helps businesses retain good workers, but this is both ways. A trained worker would be always in demand, and if I am offering rupees X to that worker, the nearest competitor will definitely offer X plus 1 and poach your worker away. But then this is where we come in. We will train each and every worker in all these adventure fields, and we are not for profit organizations, so we will be charging what is actually payable to us. So there should not be any hesitation on that part. Productivity and customer experience definitely will get enhanced. Any arguments or anybody who thinks otherwise can meet me on the sidelines. No, I will convince. I'm not using any, and of course it does wonders for the image of the company. We look for trained workers in every field. When we compare taxi services, Meru to Mega to other, we look for how their drivers, they open the door, or how they bang it shut, or they will shut it politely. So we look for the training of that driver, how he deals with the traffic conditions. But in adventure industry, for me, I have never had an experience as a client. Maybe possibly this gives me a little food for thought that I must also travel as a client to find out the training standard. Safety parameters. The first is exposure avoidance. Exposure avoidance, I am not going to that exposure avoidance of the environment. First thing which we need to avoid in exposing is the exposing of the capabilities of our client. We should not be making him or her do something which is not within their capability. That has to be kept under consideration at all times and every time. Of course, exposure to the risk which is unnecessary and which we can do without should also be always avoided. Stephen Dawa Sherpa's example I have given you, that they will not pick up the client till the time they're satisfied. Now, if you see the environmental exposure, somebody just told that they were traveling close to the last light and yet to reach the top of that hill where they were trekking to, and without torches. Amazingly bad planning. Apart from torches, if you are getting into the time of the day when it is going to be last light and it is going to be dark, you are in the jungle. Even a fairly unintelligent person like me would carry about 25 to 30 articles. Torch is included, sir. Every 165 meters of gain in height will expose us to 1 degree of reduction in 1 degree Celsius reduction of temperature, whether we are living in peninsular India or in Himalayan part of the Indian subcontinent. That is universal. And there would be places where even in this part of the country we would be gaining 1,000 or 1,200 meters in our day's climb. Am I right, sir? So when we need to work on that. Hypothermia can even set in some benign temperature to my way of life, which is about 8-10 degrees. 1 centimeter or 10 mm of rainfall over a period of 6 hours will increase the availability of the water in the river or rivulet by 15 centimeters. The speed of water will depend on the gradient of the river. But once the volume of water increases, if you are supposed to ford a river in the evening or the next morning, you need to plan it little differently, because you have the weather, a variable has taken place. So all those kind of things need to be planned in advance and to be accounted for in our training as well as planning. Or rather, first planning and then whenever we train for them. Loss reduction, loss segregation, yes, there is. I will tell you from my own example, how do we now segregate a loss? By having a palletized approach to our carrying of equipment, distribution of our instructors or guides. Just about 5-6 years back, we were conducting an Australian Army team to Shivling, and myself and one Ladakhi fellow, we were supposed to stock Camp 1, 2 and 3 along with porters. One of the porters at Gangotri got the information that his wife is sick. He went back, and others in solidarity did not work that day. So myself and that Ladakhi boy had to continue, because in army, once the schedule has been fixed, some movement has to be shown. Army believes that unless physical movement is shown, no work is done. That contemplation is not considered work in army. So we went there, set up our camp, took photographs, very beautiful, and we enjoyed each other's company. We are happily married, both of us, but still we enjoy each other's company and solitude. So the time to brew the tea and some soup and dinner. Now what to do? There is no matchbox. We have hundreds of canisters of paraffin. We have kerosene, we have stove, we have multi-fuel stove, and thousands of varieties of soup and sausages. But we cannot brew anything. We have to eat whatever the raw is there. And the next part, and we were without radio set also, because we were big funne khans कि आ जाएंगे कल ले आएंगे ये लोग रेडियो, हमने क्या करना है, हमको क्या इमरजेंसी आएगा. बट इमरजेंसी तो मैच बॉक्स का आ गया. This is something which we could get away with, but something more serious could have happened. So we have to segregate, palletize, control the situation in mountain. Now there are, in these safety parameters, there has to be certain interventions which are required. First is the intervention by the clients themselves. Their intervention has to be that they should understand what is their own capability. They should not be over-ambitious. Second is operator, industry, government regulation. All these stakeholders have to intervene and bring about a kind of, you can say, a minimum acceptable standard in which we are able to fulfill the aspiration of the clients who are paying our bread and butter. In particular, I can also say that my own bread and butter comes from training the people in the field of adventure. So I cannot be, even I am part of the government, paid by the government exchequer, but still I would say that it is now I am part of the industry, because my bread and butter comes from that side. Major issues in training: companies don't want to invest in the staff because retention of experienced staff is a big problem. And when you cannot retain, there is always the loss of that institutional knowledge. How do you manage that? Constant focus on training new employees rather than upskilling the present ones, another issue. And last, commercial adventure and outdoor education. These common hazards are there, and most of these hazards I have experienced myself. There is nothing very pleasant in them. So I'll just skip the slide. So how do we prepare to minimize our risk in adventure? The training can be divided into 4 parts. That is, firstly, we should be prepared to train. Do we have the trainability of our people? Whom do we want to train? Because trainability is one factor which I find is sometimes not present. Then train, check, supervise, validate, so many things. Reasons for safety lapses. A large number of time they are based on those variables which we have discussed, and otherwise this is how it is. From the trained manpower, this is what are the expectations, or some kind of, you can say, if the person is trained, this is what we see, that this should be the characters that person should be able to display. Outdoor registration board and level playing field across the sector. These are, 2 issues which I would request that industry can guide us how to go about them. These are some of the initiatives which came to my mind. This was told to me specifically to draft a slide on this. And these are certain initiatives which need a large, you can say, a very heavy government intervention. Public funded promotion to satisfactory safety audit, educating consumers, looking for that, like on our sweaters, we have that wool mark, silk mark on our silk things, but, some kind of that kind of thing. Maritime and Riverine Transport Act, Civil Aviation Act, which should cover our aero activities. Motor Accident Compensation Tribunal is there, which is existing. That should cover the accidents in adventure field also. This will help us in also selling our trips through the adventure, through insurance also. This will make us insured also. And level of inspection. The government as a facilitator versus regulator, I'm not getting into it, but looking at the present state of industry, it is my honest confession that presently we need government in regulator mode, and maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line in the facilitator. Difference of opinion is always welcome. This is an Army SOP's photocopy, that how, like, extra organizational influences, we call it something else, like weather forecasting accuracy, trained seasonal workforce, commercial pressure to operate in. These are the factors which lead to the mishap or injury or accident. So they have been, first are those forces which normally we can discuss, but to alter them, we need lot of effort. But there are some, like weather, whom we cannot alter also. We can only discuss. Then is management and organizational factors. And then client, equipment, and environmental. This is actually the gist of the entire presentation. And finally, on the top of the pyramid is that mishap happens and injury risk to client, which can be even fatal. We can search the client who's injured. Here I will just give you in 30 seconds an anecdote of something which happened here in Behri, near about 2 hours from Karajat railway station about 8 years back. A young fellow in the twilight hours fell down from a cliff, injured his neck. It took 27 hours for that young boy to be brought to a hospital, and rest is the history. So if there is a search and rescue, there is a system by which we can reach those people and then rescue them back to medical care. It's very, very important. Government radio network of police is very good. Adventure industry should be given a frequency on that, and it is a very, very inexpensive thing. Satellite phones, maybe where that radio signature is not there, can be used, but near the civilization, we must use this. Emergency response center, there are many ways to create it. State and district level agencies, specialized rescue training and equipment. My time is up. The slide is here. Please read at your leisure. Thank you very much.